Picture a linen rag, just a strip of cloth torn from the hem of a worn-out shift, boiled so many times it has gone the colour of weak tea. Now imagine that this rag is a secret. Imagine that washing it can only happen before dawn or after dark, in cold water, alone, because if the wrong person sees it hanging to dry, you become a topic, a rumour, a problem. Imagine that you will fold, wear, wash, and hide this rag, and others like it, every month for 35 years of your life, and that in all those years, almost no one will ever say out loud what it is for. That's the world we're going to tonight. Medieval England, the year 1351. A world where half of everyone you knew died 3 years ago in the Great Pestilence, where the Church has an opinion about your body that it wrote down in Latin, where medicine is a mixture of Galen, garden herbs and prayer, and where roughly half the population bleeds every month and the written record of the entire civilization barely mentions it. We're going back there tonight. Not as historians squinting at manuscripts. We're living it. One day, one person. Everything she would have felt, hidden, carried, and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I still have no idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just lying in the dark thinking about 14th century laundry. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The cramp arrives before you're even properly awake. It starts low, a slow twisting pressure deep in your belly, like a hand closing into a fist somewhere beneath your navel, and your body knows what it means before your mind does. Your eyes open to darkness. For a moment, maybe half a second, you've forgotten where you are. Then it hits you. The smell. It's not just one smell, it's layers. Wood smoke. First. The cold dead kind. The ghost of last night's fire sitting in the thatch above your head. Because the smoke from the hearth has nowhere to go except up through the straw, and it has been soaking into that straw for 40 years. Then animal. Warm, grassy, faintly sour. The cow standing not 10 feet from where you lie, on the other side of a wattle partition that comes up to your chest. Her breath, her dung, her heat. In winter you're grateful for that heat. It's the best thing in the house. Then the sharp green smell of drying herbs, bundles of them hanging from the roof beam. Mugwort, yarrow, tansy, shepherd's purse. Because of what your grandmother is, and what she is slowly making you become. And underneath it all, the bass note of every medieval house in England. Damp earth floor, old rushes, tallow grease, and unwashed human bodies, including yours. Welcome to the village of Marton, 7 miles from the city of Lincoln in the year of our Lord 1351. You're lying on a straw-stuffed pallet on a low wooden frame, under a woolen blanket and your own cloak, in a house that is one single room, 30 feet long and 15 feet wide, with the cow at one end and the hearth in the middle, and you and your grandmother at the other end. The floor is packed earth strewn with rushes. The walls are wattle and daub, woven sticks plastered with a mixture of clay, straw and cow dung, and the roof is thatch, and there is no chimney, and there is no window glass, only 2 small openings with wooden shutters, and there is no privacy of any kind whatsoever. Your name is Agnes Fuller. You're 16 years old. Your mother died when you were 9, in childbed, along with the baby. Your father and both your brothers died 3 years ago, in the summer of 1348, in the space of 11 days, when the pestilence came up the road from the south, and killed, as near as anyone can count, half of Marton. Half, not a figure of speech. The village had perhaps 30 households before. It has 16 now, and some of those are one old man alone in a house built for 8. You live with your grandmother, Maud. She's somewhere past 60, which makes her one of the oldest people you have ever met, and she is the closest thing this village has to a physician, which is to say, she is the midwife, the herb woman, the bone setter, the layer out of the dead, and the person every woman within 5 miles comes to see about the things they cannot say to the priest. And this morning in the dark, with that fist slowly clenching in your belly, you need her knowledge for yourself, because your flowers have come. That's the phrase. Your flowers. Nobody in this century says the word blood if they can help it, not about this. Some women say their terms, some say the sickness. The priest, if he were ever forced to mention it, which God forbid, would call it the customary matter of women in Latin at a distance with tongs. But the common word, the kitchen word, the word your grandmother uses, is flowers. And here's a thing worth knowing. The word probably comes from flow, or from the old idea that the bleeding is like the flowering of a plant before fruit, the necessary thing that comes before a child can grow. Your flowers, as if your body were a garden, as if this cramping, dragging, secret misery were a rose. You lie still for a moment in the dark and do the arithmetic every woman in every century has done. When did it last come? How many days? Is it early? Is it late? You count on your fingers under the blanket. The moon was new when it last finished, and the moon was full 2 nights ago, so 20 days, maybe 22. Early then, a little early. Your body does not keep a tidy calendar. Almost nobody's does here, because a tidy monthly cycle is a luxury of the well-fed, and you've been hungry, at least a little hungry, for most of your life. The cramp tightens again, and with it comes the warmth, the specific, unmistakable warmth of it starting, and you know that if you lie here another 10 minutes you will bleed onto the pallet, onto the straw, onto the blanket that has to last you 5 more winters, and so you move. You move the way you have learned to move, which is silently, and in the dark, and fast. The floor is cold under your bare feet, not wooden floor cold, earth cold, the cold of the ground itself coming up through the rushes, and the rushes are damp and they whisper and crackle under your weight no matter how carefully you step. You know where everything is without seeing it. 3 steps to the chest. The chest is oak, older than your grandmother. Its lid so heavy you have to lift it with both hands, and its hinges groan like a dying man so you don't open it. What you need isn't in the chest anyway. What you need is in a plain linen bag hanging on a peg behind your grandmother's spare kirtle, where a man's eyes would never go, and where even a woman's eyes would find nothing worth remarking on. A bag of rags. That is the entire technology. That is the whole apparatus that half of humanity used for roughly all of recorded history until living memory. Rags. But calling them rags undersells the craft of it. And you know the craft, because your grandmother taught it to you the way she taught you everything, with her hands in the dark in a voice pitched so low the cow couldn't hear it. You take the bag down. The linen strips inside are soft with age and boiling, each one about as long as your forearm and as wide as your hand. And there are the pads too, the thicker ones, rags folded and folded again into a wad, some of them with a filling of sphagnum moss stitched loosely inside, the same bog moss that soldiers' wounds get packed with, because it drinks blood better than cloth alone, and it is free. It grows in the low wet ground past the mill, and gathering it is one of the many small chores of your life that no one has ever asked you to explain. Your hands are steady. This is the 18th or 20th time you've done this. The first time was 2 years ago, and your hands were not steady at all. You take the folded pad, and you take the long strip, and you take the belt, a narrow woven band like a thin girdle that ties around your waist under everything. The pad goes between your legs, the long strip passes front to back over it and up through the belt at your belly and again at the small of your back, and you tie it, snug, and adjust it, and there. Held. Not pinned to underwear, because underwear as you'd think of it does not exist for women here. Women wear a linen shift and a wool kirtle over it and nothing at all beneath, which sounds shocking until you realise it makes this arrangement and several other daily necessities considerably simpler. Some women don't even do this much. You know that. Some women, especially poor women in the fields, simply bleed into their shifts and rinse them, or bleed onto the straw, or bleed down their legs and let the world pretend not to see, because rags cost cloth, and cloth costs money, and washing costs time. And when you are harvesting someone else's barley from dawn to dusk for a penny a day, time is the one thing you cannot spend. Your grandmother has opinions about this. Your grandmother has opinions about everything, but she says them quietly, and only to you, and only after checking the door. Behind you, in the dark, the straw rustles. "Early," says your grandmother's voice. Not a question. You freeze, the way you always freeze, even though it's only her, even though she is the one person in the world who's allowed to know. 2 days, you say? Maybe 3. A grunt from the darkness. The sound of an old woman sitting up, joints cracking like green wood in a fire. The moon pulls some women faster, or you've been carrying water for the Websters again and shaken it loose. Either way, is it much? Not yet. It will be by noon. Your mother was the same, light as a saint the first day, then like a stuck. She stops herself and you can hear the smile in the dark, then heavier. Take the moss ones for later. And the girdles fraying. I saw it. Bring it to me tonight and I'll reweave the end before it snaps in the middle of the market and God takes the opportunity to teach you humility. The market! You had almost managed to forget. Today is Thursday, and Thursday is market day in Lincoln, and today, for the first time in your life, you are going alone. Let me tell you why that matters, and why your stomach has been in a knot about it for a week, quite apart from the other reason your stomach is in a knot. Lincoln is 7 miles away. 7 miles of road, on foot, carrying a basket, and then a city of maybe 4,000 people, small by the standards of London, which holds 40,000 or more even after the pestilence. But to you it is the largest gathering of human beings you've ever seen or can imagine. Your grandmother has taken you 5 times. Each time she did the talking, the selling, the counting of coins, and you stood at her shoulder and watched and carried things. Today she cannot go. Old Emma Cartwright, 3 houses down, is close to her time, her first child, and she's narrow in the hips and 31 years old, which is late for a first child and everyone knows it. And everyone has been not saying it for months in that particular loud way people have of not saying things. Your grandmother will not leave the village while Emma might begin, so you go, alone, with 2 pounds of your grandmother's dried herbs to sell to the apothecary on Steep Hill, a basket of eggs, 3 skeins of wool thread your grandmother spun over the winter, and instructions so detailed and so many times repeated that you could recite them in your sleep, and probably have. And you will do all of it while bleeding. With a linen pad tied between your legs, walking 14 miles in a day. Women have always done this. You know that. Every woman you've ever met has done this, is doing this, will do this. The harvest does not pause. The cow does not milk herself. Nobody in the history of Martin has ever been excused from anything because of her flowers, except in one strange narrow way we'll get to later, involving the church. But knowing that everyone does it, and doing it yourself for the first time in a strange city, are two different things, and the difference is the exact shape of the dread sitting under your ribs. First, though, the morning. Because the day does not care how you feel, and the day starts now. You dress in the dark. The shift you slept in stays on. It stays on for a week or more at a time. It is your underlayer and your nightgown and your second skin. Over it, the kirtle, wool, dyed a dull madder brown that was once closer to red, laced up the side with a leather thong. The wool rough against your forearms where the shift sleeves have worn thin. Your fingers do the lacing without your eyes. Then the hose, wool stockings to the knee, tied with garters of braided cord, and you check the knots twice because a fallen stocking on the road is a misery. Then shoes, leather turn shoes, made by the cobbler in Sturton, soft-soled, already damp because everything in this house is always slightly damp, and cold as two small graves when your feet go in. Then the wimple. You're 16 and unmarried, so strictly you could go bareheaded with your hair in a plait, and around the village you often do. But you are going to the city, alone, and a young woman alone in a city controls exactly one thing about how men look at her, and that is how much of her they can see. So the linen kerchief goes over your hair, wrapped and tucked, and your grandmother, who is now up and poking the fire into life, glances at you and nods once, which from her is a ceremony. The fire catches. Light climbs the walls, orange and unsteady. Your grandmother crouches at the hearth like something carved, feeding it twists of straw and then small wood, and the smoke rises and pools under the thatch and begins its slow seep out through the roof. And your eyes sting, 'cause your eyes always sting. Everyone's eyes always sting. An entire civilization is living in rooms full of smoke and simply putting up with it. Breakfast is pottage. Breakfast is always pottage. Pottage is the food of your life. A pot that never entirely empties, hanging over the fire into which goes barley, oats, peas, beans, whatever greens the garden gives, leeks now in this season, and the first spring cabbage, thickened over days, thinned with water, flavoured, if you are lucky, with a scrap of bacon fat. Today there is no bacon fat. There is bread, though, yesterday's, a dense brown muslin loaf of mixed wheat and rye, and you saw off a wedge with the knife that hangs at your belt. Everyone carries their own knife. It is spoon, fork, tool, and last resort all in one, and you dip it in the pottage and eat standing up, hip against the doorframe, looking out at the dark blue morning. The cramp comes again while you're eating, a slow roll of pressure, and you press the heel of your hand into your belly below the basket's future weight and breathe through it. Your grandmother sees. Your grandmother sees everything. "Come here," she says. She's at the hearth with a small pot, and the smell rising from it is one you know, mugwort steeped in hot water, bitter and green and slightly like a memory of dust. Herbals from this century and long before recommend it for exactly this. The physicians who write in Latin call the plant Artemisia, after Artemis, the goddess who looked after women, though your grandmother doesn't know that and would sniff at it if she did. What she knows is that her mother gave it to her, and her mother's mother gave it to her mother, and it eases the gripe in the belly, and it is growing right now, free, along the ditch behind the church. Drink it hot, all of it. It tastes like penance. You drink it. And here is the thing. Whether it is the mugwort or the heat of the water, or simply the fact of your grandmother standing over you with her arms crossed radiating the pure concentrated authority of 60 years of other people's emergencies, the fist in your belly loosens a little. She takes your chin in her hand, tilts your face to the firelight, and studies you the way she studies the sky before a hay harvest. Pale, she says. You always run pale the first day. Eat the egg. The eggs are for market. 11 eggs sell as well as 12. Eat the egg. You eat the egg. She turns away to bank the fire, and over her shoulder, in the tone she uses for the most important things, the tone that pretends they are not important at all, she says, change the cloth before you go into the city, not after. Behind a hedge, not at the roadside. Wrap the used one in the dock leaves I put in your basket and bring it home. You don't leave it, you don't bury it, you bring it home. And Agnes, she doesn't turn around. If any woman at the market sees you're in your flowers and says a word about it, she's telling you she's a fool. And now you know it, and that's worth knowing about a person. Say nothing back. Fools do the talking for both of you. You will think about that sentence, on and off, for the rest of your life. Why bring the used cloth home? You asked once, 2 years ago, and got the long answer, and the long answer is worth hearing, because it opens a door into how this entire world thinks about the blood you're carrying. There are 2 beliefs about menstrual blood in your world, and they live side by side, contradicting each other, the way beliefs do. The first belief comes down from the ancient world, from a Roman writer named Pliny the Elder, dead 1300 years now, whose natural history is still being copied and quoted by learned men as if he checked any of it. Pliny wrote, and I want you to understand that educated men in universities right now, in 1351, are reading this respectfully, that the touch of a menstruating woman can turn wine sour, wither crops, kill grafted plants, blunt razors, dim mirrors, rust iron and bronze, kill bees in the hive, and drive dogs mad. That contact with the blood itself is one of the most powerful contaminating forces in nature. This is in a book. This is in the book, one of the most copied works of natural knowledge in Europe. And it has trickled down, over centuries, from Latin manuscripts into sermons, from sermons into proverbs, from proverbs into the reflex of a farmer's wife shooing a bleeding woman away from the dairy, because everyone knows a woman in her terms will turn the butter, spoil the brewing, sour the milk. Everyone knows it the way everyone knows anything, because their mothers knew it. The second belief is the mirror of the first, and your grandmother trades in it quietly, that the blood is powerful, not filthy, potent. Physicians teach that menstruation is the body purge in excess humours, that it is necessary and healthy, that a woman whose flowers stop without cause is a woman in danger, whose body is retaining what should be released. Some healing charms call for it. Some love charms, whispered about, call for it. A thing this surrounded by rules, this hidden, this feared, is a thing people secretly believe can do work. And that is exactly why your grandmother says bring the cloth home. Because a rag soaked with your blood, found by the wrong person, is not garbage. It is material. It could be used in a charm against you. It could be presented as evidence of you making charms. In a village of 16 households where everyone has known everyone since birth, and half of everyone's family died 3 years ago, and people are still, quietly, looking for someone to blame, You do not leave pieces of yourself lying around. So it goes in the basket, wrapped in dock leaves, under the wool, like contraband. Your own blood, smuggled through your own life. The sky is going grey gold in the east, 7 miles ahead of you. You take the basket. It drags at your arm immediately, the eggs nested in straw, the herb bundles wrapped in sacking, the wool skeins, the bread and cheese for your dinner, the spare cloths folded flat at the very bottom where no searching hand would casually go. Your grandmother stands in the doorway with her arms folded. Straight up steep hill to Aldred the apothecary. He's the third shop past the church of St. Michael, green door, 9p for the lot and not a farthing under 8p. And if he starts on about the quality of the tansy, you tell him it's the same tansy his customers have been buying for 30 years, and if he's found better, he's welcome to walk to Martin and pick it himself. Eggs to the market, penny a dozen is fair. Sell to a woman, not a man. Women don't argue over eggs. The thread to the wool stalls by the stone bow. Home before dark. Before dark, Agnes. Before dark. She looks at you a moment longer. Something moves in her face, too quick to name. Your mother sold at that market from the time she was 14, she says. Stood where you'll stand. You've a same look about you when you're being brave and pretending it's nothing. A pause. Go on then. The day won't wait. And you go, out into the cold blue morning, down the one street of Martin, past the church with its squat stone tower, past the empty houses with their fallen-in thatch that nobody talks about, out onto the Lincoln Road, one girl, one basket, one secret tied snugly at her waist, walking north. The road is not a road the way you'd think of a road. It's a wide scar of packed and rutted earth, hardened at the crown, churned to a soup of mud at the edges where carts have swerved around each other for 400 years. In places it runs on the ghost of something older, a Roman road, laid down 12 centuries ago by men whose empire nobody here can properly imagine. Its stones long since robbed out for barns and churches, but its straightness still printed on the land like a crease in cloth. Ermine Street, the old people call this line of travel. It runs from London to Lincoln and on to the Humber, and legions marched it, and now you walk it, 16 years old, carrying eggs. And here's the first thing about walking 7 miles with your flowers on. You feel everything. You feel the pad with every stride. Not painfully. Your grandmother's folding is good. The moss sits where it should. But constantly, a presence. A soft, insistent bulk that changes the way your thighs move. That makes you aware of your own walking in a way you never are otherwise. You feel the girdle at your waist under the kirtle, and you feel the drag of the cramp which has faded to a dull ache, and you feel a hot heaviness low in your back that no herb entirely touches. The physicians would tell you this is the womb, which they believe to be a restless organ, purging its excess. Your grandmother will tell you it's the first day and it passes. Both of them, for once, are giving you the same practical advice. Keep moving, keep warm, and endure. The morning traffic thickens as the sun climbs. This is market day, remember? And every road into Lincoln is a slow river of the same intention. A man driving 6 geese with a hazel switch, the geese hissing at everything, magnificent in their outrage. 2 women with baskets of spring greens balanced on their heads, spines straight as spear shafts, gossiping without ever turning to look at each other. A cart of hides, which you smell for a full minute before you see, and for 2 minutes after it passes. A pardoner in a stained cloak, riding a mule, who looks at every person he passes with the quick sorting glance of a man who sells forgiveness for coin, and is always counting the house. You keep your eyes down when he passes. your grandmother's voice in your head. A pardoner is a purse with a sermon attached. Around the 3rd mile, the ache in your belly sharpens, and you feel the warmth again, more of it now, and you know the first cloth is doing its work and will not do it forever, and this is the calculation, the endless, invisible, lifelong calculation that no chronicle will ever record. How far to the next hedge? How heavy is the flow? How many cloths in the basket? How many hours in the day? Every woman on this road who's between about 14 and about 40 is capable of running this arithmetic. Perhaps a quarter of them are running it right now. None of them will ever say so. You find your hedge just past the 4th mile where the road dips and a field boundary comes down to meet it. Blackthorn in white blossom, dense as a wall. You wait until the road is empty in both directions. A long wait. You stand there pretending profound interest in the blossom, heart going harder than the task deserves. Then step through the gap and into the field margin, out of sight. And now the small, unrecorded ceremony. Basket down, skirts up, gathered and pinned under one arm, cold air on your thighs. Untie the front knot. Your fingers are cold and the knot is snug, and for one flash of a second you hate everything. The knot, the cold, the road, the moon, the entire arrangement of creation. Then it gives. The used cloth comes away heavier than it went in, and dark, and you do not look at it longer than you must. Not out of horror, but out of practicality. Though you do look at it once, deliberately, because your grandmother taught you to. The colour, the thickness, the clots, or the absence of them. The blood is a report, she says, dark and thick, bright and thin, scanty, flooding. Each tells you something about the body it came from, and a woman who won't read her own report is a woman who walks into her own troubles blind. Bright enough, normal enough, fine. The used cloth gets wrapped in the broad dock leaves, folded like a parcel of fish, and buried in the bottom of the basket. The fresh pad, this one moss-filled, thicker, meant for the heavy hours, goes in its place. The strip goes front to back, the knots go snug, the skirts come down, and the whole operation has taken perhaps 200 heartbeats, and you step back through the hedge onto the road, and you're simply a girl with a basket again, and the man now cresting the rise with his donkey will never know. And that is the entire point of everything. That is the discipline your world demands, and you have learned not to stop bleeding. Nobody can do that, but make it invisible. The work is not the blood. The work is the concealment of the blood. Hours of every month, for every woman, spent on pure invisibility. Add it up across a life. Add it up across a village. Add it up across Christendom, and you're looking at one of the largest single expenditures of human effort in the medieval world, and it appears in no ledger, no chronicle, no tax roll, anywhere, ever. The greatest labour is the labour of seeming not to labour. And then, at the 5th mile, the road climbs a long, slow rise, and you come over the top of it, and you stop walking. Because there it is, Lincoln Cathedral. You've seen it before. Seeing it before does not help. It stands on its limestone ridge above the city the way a thunderhead stands above a field, and it does not look built, it looks arrived. Golden grey stone, a body of towers and pinnacles longer than your entire village, and rising from its crossing, the spire. Let me tell you about the spire, because it deserves telling. The central tower was raised at the start of this century, and some 40 years ago they crowned it with a spire of timber sheathed in lead, and the whole thing together stands, they say, 525 feet above the ground. higher than anything human hands have ever raised, anywhere, ever, higher than the Great Pyramid of Egypt, which held the record for the better part of 4,000 years until this went past it. The tallest building in the world is not in Rome or Paris or Constantinople. It is here, on a hill in Lincolnshire, above the wool merchants and the mud, and on a clear day shepherds 30 miles off can see it and know which way is home. The men who built the tower were alive when your grandmother was a girl. She remembers, she says, when the spire was new lead and flashed in the sun like a blade. It's that recent, that real. You stand on the rise with your basket dragging at your arm and the ache in your back and the secret at your waist, and you look at it, and something in your chest goes very still. There is nothing in your daily life that is beautiful on purpose. Your world is functional. Mud, wattle, wool, pottage. Beauty is a thing that belongs to God and to the rich, in roughly that order. And here is the largest piece of it in the world, and even you, Agnes Fuller of Marton, 16, in your flowers with 11 eggs, even you are allowed to look at it for free. You look for as long as you dare. Then you walk on, because the eggs won't sell themselves and the day, as your grandmother says, won't wait. The city announces itself first as noise, then as smell, then as walls. The noise comes to you across the last mile, a low, continuous, grinding murmur, like a river heard through trees, that resolves as you get closer into its parts. Cartwheels on stone, hammers, bells, animals, and under all of it the sound of roughly 4,000 human voices doing business at once. The smell arrives next, and it arrives like a wall of its own. Wood smoke and dung and fish and tanning leather and brewing ale and butcher's offal, and threading through everything, the river Witham, which serves the city as highway, larder and sewer simultaneously and smells like all three. Then the gate. Lincoln keeps its Roman bones. You enter the lower city through an arch, whose lowest courses were set by legionaries, and the traffic funnels and jams, carts and geese and pack ponies and people, everyone pressing, everyone shouting, and a toll collector's man leans on the arch watching for anyone bringing goods to sell. Because yes, you pay for the privilege, a farthing on your basket, and he pokes the sacking with one finger, an inch from where the wrapped cloth lies hidden, and your heart stops the way a bell stops when you grab it, and he waves you through without a glance at your face, and your heart starts again, and you are inside. You are inside, and Lincoln swallows you whole. Understand what a city means when you come from a place with 16 households. It means more strangers in your first minute than you meet at home in a year. It means buildings of 2 and 3 stories leaning their upper floors out over the street until they nearly touch. So you walk in a canyon of timber and plaster, laundry and shop signs overhead, the sky reduced to a bright ribbon. It means the gutter down the middle of the street is running with things you decide not to identify. It means noise so constant your ears give up and let it become silence. It means keeping one hand on your basket, always, without exception, because a market crowd is a cut purse's harvest, and a country girl gaping at the buildings is the easiest sheaf in the field. And it means, rising ahead of you at the top of everything, the hill. They call it Steep Hill because medieval people, whatever else you say about them, were honest namers of things. The street climbs from the lower city to the upper, at a gradient that turns everyone, merchant, priest, pack pony, into the same slow-toiling pilgrim. And you are climbing it with a basket on the first day of your flowers, with the moss pad shifting at every step, and your back one long dull ache from your shoulder blades to your knees. And let no one ever tell you medieval women were delicate, because the delicate did not survive to be recorded. Halfway up, you stop in the shadow of a stone house. A Jew's house, the old people still call it. Though the Jews of Lincoln were expelled with all the Jews of England 60 years ago by the old king, and that is a whole dark story of this city that we will not walk into tonight. And you breathe and shift the basket to the other arm and press your hand once, briefly, against your belly. A woman coming down the hill with a bundle of washing on her head catches the gesture. Just the gesture. She's perhaps 40, red-faced, forearms like a smith's. Her eyes flick from your hand to your face, one single assessing flick faster than a blink, and she gives you a look that is not sympathy and not quite humour, but is unmistakably recognition. The look of one member of a very large secret society acknowledging another, and she says nothing at all and walks on. And that, right there, is the entire sisterhood of it. No words, there are never words, just several 100 million women across the whole breadth of history, glancing at each other on hills. Aldred the apothecary's shop is where your grandmother said it would be. Third past St. Michael's, green door, and the door stands open, and the smell that rolls out of it stops you on the threshold the way a hand on the chest would. It is the smell of everything at once. Dried rose and rotting root. Pepper, actual pepper, a smell you've encountered perhaps twice in your life, worth more by weight than silver. Vinegar, honey, tallow, sulphur. Bitter green herb dust that catches in the back of your throat, and under it something animal and strange. And over it all, incense. Because Aldred, like every shopkeeper of things ingestible, understands that a shop that smells holy sells more. The shop is one room, dark after the street, its walls shelved to the low ceiling. Bunches of dried plants hang from the beams like 100 small executions. Earthenware jars with words painted on them that you cannot read. Hardly anyone you know can read. Reading is a craft, like smithing, that belongs to other people. A scale gleams on the counter, small brass pans on chains, the most precise object you've ever stood near. Aldred himself is a narrow man of 50 with ink-stained fingers and the permanently sceptical face of a man who has spent 30 years being lied to about the freshness of other people's herbs. He looks at you, looks at your basket and says, "You'll be Maud of Martin's girl. Her granddaughter. She's kept at home, a woman near her time." He grunts in the manner of a man conceding that birth outranks commerce, and holds out his hand for the bundles, and now begins the negotiation, and I will spare you the whole liturgy of it, but understand the shape. He unwraps each bundle, smells it, crumbles a leaf, holds it to the light from the door. He declares the tansy dusty. You tell him, heart hammering, voice steady, your grandmother's exact words coming out of your mouth like a recitation, that it is the same tansy his customers have bought for 30 years, and he's welcome to walk to Martin and pick better. Something that is almost a smile disturbs the lower half of his face. He offers 7 pence. You say 9 pence. He says 8 pence, and says it like a door closing. And 8 pence was your grandmother's true floor, and you say done, and he counts the coins into your palm. Small silver pennies thin as fish scales, each one bearing the crowned face of King Edward, the third of that name. And you have just completed the largest transaction of your life. But it's what happens next that you'll remember. Because while he's rewrapping the herbs, a woman comes in, well-dressed, a burgess's wife by the cut of her, good green wool, silver pin in her wimple, and she waits and glances at you and waits, and it slowly becomes clear that she is waiting for you to leave. Aldred, who has seen this dance 1,000 times, says blandly, "The girl's with Maud of Marton, the midwife." And the woman's shoulders come down 1/2 inch, and she leans over the counter, and in a voice meant to be private but perfectly audible in a room 12 feet across, she says, "It's my daughter, 15. Her courses have never yet come, and my husband's mother says she should be bled from the foot to draw them down, and the physician wants a fortune to cast her horoscope first, and there it is. The whole medical world of 1351 in one sentence, in a shop. Let me unfold it for you, because this is worth a moment. When your flowers fail to come, and this is one of the few contexts in which the entire apparatus of official medicine will discuss them at all. The learned response runs on the theory of the 4 humours. The body, say the physicians following Galen, an ancient Greek dead more than 1,000 years, is governed by 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Women are cooler and moister than men. This is stated as flatly as the roundness of the moon, and because they are cooler, they cannot fully burn off the excess of their nourishment, and so the excess collects and must be purged monthly, and that purge is menstruation. It is, in this theory, not a curse and not filth. It is plumbing, necessary, health-giving. A girl whose courses will not start is a girl dangerously retaining what should flow, and the remedies aim to draw the blood downward, bleeding from a vein in the foot. Yes, exactly as the grandmother said, hot baths for the feet, herbs classed as hot and opening, and for the wealthy, a physician who will first cast the stars because the moon governs all flows, of tides and of women, and no respectable doctor of physic would dream of prescribing without an astrological chart. That is what the fortune is for. The horoscope is not a swindle bolted onto the medicine. The horoscope is the medicine, as far as the university men are concerned. And meanwhile, standing in the doorway with your basket, you know, because you have watched your grandmother handle a dozen versions of this exact case, what Maud of Marton would say. She'd ask what the girl eats. She'd ask when the household last had meat. She'd look at the girl's wrists and the hollows of her cheeks, and likelier than not she'd say what she always says, feed her. The flowers follow the flesh. A body that is starving does not spare blood for flowers. Your grandmother has never read Galen, and Galen never went hungry through an English February, and between the 2 of them, on this particular question, your grandmother has the better data. Aldred sells the woman a packet of something hot and opening, and takes her silver, and the world turns. You buy nothing, but before you go, Aldred, weighing you with these sceptical eyes, says an unexpected thing. Tell Maud the new physician up by the close has been asking, who does the women's work in the villages south? Asking in a friendly way. A pause that is not friendly. Tell her I said so. You don't understand it entirely. You will, later. You tuck it away, the way you tuck everything away, and go back out into the noise. The market fills the space below the stone bow like water filling a print in mud, completely and into every corner. Stalls of trestles and boards, awnings of stretched canvas snapping in the wind off the hill, and between them a crowd so dense that movement is negotiation. You have never been alone in anything like this. The noise is a physical pressure. Fish women crying the freshness of fish that you can smell and negotiating with the truth. A man with a tray of ribbons and pins yelling points, pins, laces, ladies, in a chant so worn it has stopped being words. Chickens complaining. a friar preaching at the cross to an audience of 6, 4 of whom are waiting for a stall to open behind him, 2 bailiffs' men moving through the press with the unhurried walk of men whose job is to be seen, the bell of St. Peter at Arches counting out terce, mid-morning, and nobody even glancing up. You find the egg seller's end, and you do what your grandmother said. You sell to a woman. She's a cook's servant from some canon's household up the hill, brisk, clean-aproned, and she looks at your 11 eggs and says a penny for the lot, and you hear yourself say a penny for the dozen is fair, but there's 11. So a penny and you'll remember her kindly to your grandmother, the midwife of Martin. And the woman laughs out loud one short bark and says, "You'll go far, country mouse," and pays the penny. The wool thread goes almost as easily 3pence for the 3 skeins to a weaver's wife who tests the twist between finger and thumb with her eyes shut, like a woman listening to music. By the bell of sext, noon, you have done it, all of it. 1 shilling, or near enough, in small silver, knotted into a cloth and tied inside your kirtle against your body, where no cut-purse's fingers can reach it without you knowing. Your grandmother's list complete. Your dinner of bread and hard cheese eaten standing in the shelter of the Stonebow Arch, watching the crowd the way you'd watch weather. And the flow is heavy now. Your grandmother said by noon, and your grandmother, as usual, was right. You can feel that the moss pad is doing its work and that its work is nearly done. There is a warmth and a weight to it that has crossed from reassuring to urgent. You need a place to change the cloth, and you are in the middle of 4,000 people, and this is the problem the historians will never write about, because the men who wrote things down never once in their lives had to solve it. Where does a woman go in a medieval city at midday to do a private thing? Not to a privy. The public ones, over the river, are a plank with holes in company with strangers. Not to an alley. Alleys have eyes, and a woman crouched in an alley is assumed to be doing one of 2 things, and neither assumption helps her. Not to an inn. An inn costs money, and a girl alone in an inn is a story that walks home ahead of her. You solve it the way women have always solved it. You find the churchyard. St. Michael on the Mount, back up the hill a little, has a yard behind it, walled, quiet, a few leaning stones, a yew tree older than the church, and a corner where the wall and the yew make a pocket of privacy that God, in his mercy, does not seem to mind lending out. You are not the first. You know you are not the first, because generations of need have worn a discreet path to exactly that corner. You wait for an old man to finish his slow circuit of the graves and leave. Then skirts, knot, cloth, dock leaves, basket, knots again, skirts again. Faster this time. Your hands have learned the sequence. 200 heartbeats has become 150, and you come out of the churchyard with your face arranged into blankness, and a priest passing the gate nods at you approvingly, taking you for a girl who has been praying at her family's graves, and you nod back and let him keep the story, because it's a good story, and it costs you nothing. But the churchyard has put the church in your mind, and the church in this world has more to say about your flowers than almost anyone, and almost all of it is said around you, above you, and about you, and never once to you. So let's say it here, quietly, while you climb the last of the hill toward the cathedral, because you have an hour of your own for the first time in your life, and your feet are carrying you toward the biggest thing you've ever seen, and the walk will take exactly as long as the explanation. Everything the church believes about your blood begins with a book, and the book is Leviticus, and Leviticus is very clear. A menstruating woman is ritually unclean 7 days, and everything she lies on is unclean, and everything she sits on is unclean, and whoever touches her is unclean until evening. That's the old law. Now, Christian teaching formally says the old law's purity codes were fulfilled and set aside. Pope Gregory the Great himself, 7.5 centuries before your time, wrote to the missionary Augustine in England, this very England, and said with remarkable gentleness that a menstruating woman must not be forbidden from entering church or taking communion, for the workings of nature are not sin, and that she deserved praise rather than blame if, out of reverence, she chose to wait. Do you see the shape of that ruling? Officially, you are welcome. Pastorally, it would be lovelier if you stayed away. And guess which half survived the journey from a papal letter to a village pulpit to a village pew? So in Marton, women in their flowers mostly do not take communion, which costs little, since most people only take it at Easter anyway. And many hang back from the holy water, and some will not enter the church at all, and none of this is law, and all of it is custom. And custom in a village is heavier than law, because law lives in Lincoln, and custom lives next door. Your grandmother goes to church in her flowers or out of them, planted in the same spot on the same rushes, daring the world with her eyebrows. But your grandmother has earned an old woman's immunities, and you have not, and you know the difference, and that knowing, that constant fingertip sense of exactly how much space you're permitted to take up, is as much a part of your inheritance as the recipe for mugwort tea. There's more. After childbirth, a woman is kept from church for a span, 40 days traditionally, and then returns in a small ceremony called churching, veiled, candle in hand, blessed at the church door before re-entering. The priest will tell you it is a thanksgiving for her survival. The grandmothers will tell you in fewer words that it is a purification. It is both. It is a rite that cannot decide whether it is congratulating the woman or decontaminating her, and in that indecision you can read the entire mind of your civilization on the subject of women's bodies. And you know, everyone knows, the quieter rules that fill the space around the official ones, that a woman in her flowers should not make the sign of the cross over the brewing, that some say a child conceived during the flowers will be born marked, red-haired or leprous. The learned men debate this in Latin with perfect seriousness, that the blood, again, always, is either poison or power and never ever simply blood. Carry all of that. Carry it every month, invisibly, along with the moss and the linen and the ache in your back, and then look up. Because you have reached the top of steep hill and passed through the gate into the close, and the cathedral is in front of you, and there is no carrying anything for a moment, because there is no room in you for anything but this. The west front rises like a cliff that someone has carved into lace. Stone saints stand in their niches, rank above rank, higher than any person needs statues to be, and they are painted. You can see the traces even from here, reds and blues and gilding, because the medieval cathedral is not the bare grey bone the centuries will strip it to. It is coloured, it is loud, it is meant to hit you exactly as hard as it is hitting you now. Above the ranks of saints, the towers. Above the towers, half the sky is spire. You tip your head back and your wimple pulls at its pins, and the top of it, the very tip, 500 feet and more above your shoes, is a thing your eyes can find, but your mind keeps dropping, like trying to hold water in a sieve. Men built that. Men no bigger than the men in the market below hauled that stone up the sky on wooden wheels and rope, and some of them fell, and some of them grew old on the scaffolds. Grandfather and father and son on the same tower, and the ones who topped out the spire stood where only weather had ever been. You go in. Anyone may go in. The door alone is 3 times a man's height, and then you're inside, and the inside is worse than the outside. Worse meaning better, meaning more, meaning your breath actually stops. The nave goes up forever and away forever. Stone piers thick as houses rise, and then, impossibly, lean together and become ceiling. Ribs of stone meeting in bosses carved with leaves and faces so far above you they might be weather. The windows are pictures made of coloured light. You have heard of glass. You have seen small dull panes of it. But this is glass as the burning bush. Glass telling stories in ruby and cobalt to people who cannot read, which is the point, which was always the point. This whole building is a book for people like you. The air is cold and vast and tastes of stone and incense and candle smoke. Somewhere out of sight, voices are chanting the office, plainsong rising and folding into the roof, and the roof takes each note and holds it a full breath longer than any human throat could, so the building itself seems to sing a half-beat behind the men, like a mother echoing a child. And you stand there, Agnes Fuller, on the worn stone, with your basket of egg money and hidden cloths, in your flowers, in the largest building in the world. And I want you to notice what you notice, because by every whispered rule you've ever absorbed, you are at this moment the least worthy person in this holy place, and nothing happens. No stone cracks, no candle gutters. The chant goes on. An old canon shuffles past you and nods, the way men nod at girls praying. The coloured light lies across your hands, the same as it lies across everyone's, red and gold, entirely indifferent to the calendar of your body. And a thought arrives in you. Not rebellion, nothing so grand. You would not have the words for rebellion, just a small, quiet, dangerous observation, the kind your grandmother deals in. Whatever God minds, it does not seem to be this. It is people who mind. And people, as your grandmother says, are frequently fools, and fools do the talking for both of you. You give the cathedral one last long look, purchase a farthing candle and light it for your mother, who bled to death in a room you still sleep in, 7 years ago, a thing we will come back to because this whole day has been walking toward it. And you go back out into the wind, and the light hits you, and the city lies below you, and this, right here, at the top of the hill, is the view. The whole of Lincoln steps down the slope at your feet, a tumble of red-brown roofs and smoke plumes, and then the walls, and then the land, and the land goes on further than you have ever seen land go. South, the road home, a pale thread. West, the river Witham glinting through its water meadows, barges on it small as beetles, hauling wool that will go down to Boston and over the sea to Flanders, because the wool on the backs of Lincolnshire sheep is the oil of this economy. Kingdoms borrow against it. Wars are fought on the credit of it, and some of it began as fleece your own village sheared. East and north, fields in their long strips, green on green on green, dotted with towers of village churches, a dozen of them more, each one a martin, each one full of people you will never meet living lives identical to yours in every particular, including, in half of them, the particular tied at this moment under your kirtle. The wind up here is clean. It smells of nothing but distance. You stand there longer than you should, coin knotted against your ribs, ache in your back, 7 miles between you and your supper, and you fix it in your memory deliberately, pressing it in like a seal into wax. The roofs, the river, the fields, the enormous pale sky. Whatever else this day is, and it is not done with you, not nearly, it has given you this, and this is yours. and nobody in Marton can take it away because nobody in Marton knows you have it. Then the cathedral bell tolls nuns, mid-afternoon, directly over your head. So huge a sound it is less heard than felt, in your teeth, in your breastbone, in the coin against your ribs. And it means the afternoon is going, and dark comes on its own schedule, and your grandmother's voice says before dark, Agnes, in a tone that reaches all the way from Marton. You go down the hill much faster than you came up it, and the day, which has been kind since morning, chooses the road home to stop being kind. It goes wrong at the gate, in the crush. The afternoon crowd leaving a market is thicker and worse tempered than the morning crowd arriving at one. Everyone is tired. Half the men have spent their profits in the ale houses. The carts are jammed axle to axle under the old Roman arch, and the crowd squeezes into the gap between them like grain into a funnel. You are pressed on all sides, to your woman's basket in your spine, a man's elbow at your ear, the flank of a pack pony hot against your arm. And somewhere in that grinding, shuffling press, a fist closes on the cloth of your kirtle at the hip and pulls, a cut purse. Except he hasn't found a purse because your coin is knotted inside your clothing against your body exactly as your grandmother taught you. And what his groping hand finds instead is the tie of your girdle. The girdle, the one under everything, the one holding the whole hidden architecture of your day in place. And the tug comes hard and sideways, and you feel a knot give. You will never know his face. He is a pressure and a pull, and then gone, swallowed, empty-handed, already trying the next hip in the crowd. But the damage stays with you. The belt has slipped, the pad has shifted, and you're locked in a crowd, moving at the crowd's speed, shoulder to shoulder with strangers, and you can feel, with the terrible clarity your body reserves for exactly this, that things are no longer where they must be, and the flow is at its heaviest hour, and there is nothing you can do about any of it except keep walking. This is the nightmare. Understand? Not injury, not theft. This, every woman of your world carries in the back drawer of her mind one specific fear, and it is not wolves and it is not brigands. It is blood where it can be seen. Because blood seen is not a private misfortune. Blood seen is public. Blood on your kirtle at the gate of Lincoln in front of 200 people is a story with your name on it that will walk the 7 miles to Marton faster than you can, that will arrive before you, that will be waiting at the well tomorrow morning wearing your neighbours' faces. Shame here is not a feeling. Shame is a possession, like a cow. It can be lost, and once lost it is a long labour to get back. A young unmarried woman's whole standing, her marriageability, which is to say her entire economic future, which is to say her life, is a fabric woven out of what is said about her. You are one wet, spreading stain away from being a thing said about. The crowd inches. The arch swallows you and holds you in its cold stone shadow. The same stones legionaries set, utterly indifferent. They have watched 1,200 years of small human emergencies pass beneath them, and then spits you into the light. You get to the road edge. You make yourself walk, not run, 100 yards, 200, past the last straggle of houses to where a field wall meets a stand of ash trees, and you step behind the wall, and your hands are shaking now, properly shaking as you gather your skirts, and it is bad, but not the disaster. The knot gave, but the second knot held. The pad slewed sideways, but the shift caught what escaped, and the shift is linen, and linen is washable, and the kirtle. You check it in the flat afternoon light, turning the wool, heart in your mouth. The kirtle is clean. The world will see nothing. You lean your forehead against the field wall for a moment, the stone cold and gritty against your skin, and you breathe, and to your own complete fury you find you are crying, 4 or 5 hot, stupid tears, not from pain and not even from fear anymore, but from the pure, spent aftermath of it, the way you cry after nearly dropping a full pot rather than after dropping it. Then you stop crying, because crying is a luxury with a time limit, and you fix everything. Last fresh pad, knots doubled, girdle retied so tight it will leave a mark. The ruined arrangement gets wrapped and buried in the basket with the others. 3 used cloths now ride under the sacking like the day's secret ledger. You wipe your face with the back of your wrist, pick up the basket and step back onto the road, and to the drover who passes you 2 minutes later you're just a girl walking, which is the greatest illusion your civilization performs daily and gives no one credit for. 7 miles. You walk them into the lowering sun. Your feet have gone past aching into a kind of ringing numbness. The turnshoes' soles are thin enough that you read the road through them, every rut and stone like a blind woman reading a face. The ache in your back has colonized your hips. Your hands are cracked at the knuckles from cold water and wind, and the basket handle has pressed a deep red groove across the fingers of both, and you shift it arm to arm on a rhythm now. 50 counts and change, 50 counts and change. And somewhere in the long middle of those miles, with the light going gold and then amber and the rooks streaming home over the strip fields, your tired mind does what tired minds do and drifts. And where it drifts is to your mother. Joan, her name was. You have to reach for her face now, and the reaching gets longer every year, but you keep her hands with no effort at all. Quick, chapped, kind, plaiting your hair too tight on purpose to make you shriek and laugh. She was carrying her 6th child. 3 had lived, your brothers and you, and everything was as it always was, and then it wasn't. It went wrong in the night, the way it goes wrong, the bleeding that starts and does not stop. Your grandmother, her own mother, fought for her with everything the world had given her to fight with. Shepherd's purse to staunch, birthwort, pressure and prayer, and the birthing girdle borrowed from the priest, a strip of parchment with holy words, wrapped round a labouring belly, because in this world the last medicine is always words. You were 9. You were sent to the far end of the room, to the cow's end, and you sat in the straw against the warm flank of the cow, and listened to your grandmother's voice stay calm, hour after hour, which was how you learned that a calm voice and a winning fight are not the same thing. Toward dawn it went quiet. Nobody counts these deaths. There is no ledger anywhere in England of women dead in childbed, but every village keeps the tally in the only record it has, which is its widowers and its motherless children, and the tally is high, and everyone knows it, and it is the water everyone swims in, that the blood which visits a woman every month in miniature can, at the hour of her greatest work, arrive in full and take her. Your flowers and your mother's death are the same river at different depths. Your grandmother has never said this to you. Your grandmother has said it around you 100 times, in the way she teaches, in the way her hands go still over certain herbs, in the way she said this morning, light as a saint the first day, your mother was the same, and then changed the subject with her whole body. The sun is low and swollen when you finally raise the tower of Martin Church above the hedgerows, and your legs find something extra at the sight of it, the way legs do, and you come down the last half mile into the village in the long, blue dusk, before dark, just barely, technically, arguably before dark, and you know instantly that something is happening, because there is a boy running up the street toward you, and the boy is one of the Webster children, 8 years old, barefoot, wild, and he is shouting your name. Agnes! Agnes! Your gran says, come! She says, come now and bring the basket. It's Emma Cartwright. It's started! You run. 14 miles in your legs, and you run anyway, basket banging your hip, down the darkening street to the Cartwright house, and the door opens before you reach it and swallows you into heat and light and the smell of birth. Understand where you've just entered, because this room is one of the most important rooms in your entire civilization, and it appears in almost no book. This is the birthing chamber, and it is women's country. Absolutely, categorically women's country. There is no man in this house. John Cartwright was sent out the door an hour ago, and is now standing in the Webster house, across the way, drinking ale he cannot taste, and he will not come back until he is fetched. And this is not a courtesy. It is a law of custom as hard as any statute. Birth belongs to women. The church has exactly one man-shaped door into this room. The priest, if it comes to the worst, to baptize his dying child. And even the church licenses midwives to perform emergency baptism themselves rather than send a man in here. In the entire architecture of medieval life, which puts men above women in every room, every court, every ledger, this one room inverts. In here, your grandmother is not an old widow with one cow. In here, your grandmother is the highest authority within a day's walk, and everyone, up to and including the lady of the manor, if it were her lying in, would do what Maud of Marton says. The room has been made ready in the old way. Every door of the house stands unlatched, every chest unlocked, every knot in the room untied. Girdles, laces, even the woman's hair loosed over her shoulders, because like opens like, and a room full of unbound things helps a body unbind. You were raised on this. Whether it works on the womb, it works on the women. There is a rightness to it, a settling. Everyone's hands know what to do with it, and a room where every hand knows its work is already half calm. The fire is built high. The room is stifling and the shutters are fast because night air is feared, and the light is fire and 3 rush lights, a moving amber gloom. Water heats in the big pot. Linen, blessed and otherwise, is stacked. On the beam above the bed hangs the parchment birthing girdle, the priest's loan, its inked prayers facing down at the labour like a crop watcher. There are 5 women in the room, and now 6. The wives, neighbours, because attending is a duty and an honour, and a debt endlessly repaid around the village. Women who are attended attend in their turn, and in the centre of them, on the bed, and then off it, walking, gripping the bedpost, Emma Cartwright, 31 years old, her face like wet clay, her loosened hair stuck to her cheeks, her whole world narrowed to a rhythm, and in charge of everything, sleeves rolled to the elbow, your grandmother, who looks up at you across the firelight and says only, basket, the shepherd's purse and the raspberry leaf from the top. Then wash your hands and arms, hot water to the elbow, and don't argue. Nobody argues. You will notice, file it away, that the hand-washing is your grandmother's own liturgy, not the physician's. Washing before rather than only after is her habit, learned from her mother, defended with the unanswerable argument of 30 years of mostly living mothers. The learned world will take another 500 years to catch up to Maud of Marton on this point. She could not tell you why. She would only tell you that birth is like baking, and no one bakes with dung on their hands. And now, hours, real hours. Birth is not an event. Birth is a siege, and a first birth at 31 is a long one. Your job is small and total. Keep the water hot, keep the fire fed, keep the rushlights trimmed, fetch, hold, wring cloths, and watch your grandmother work. Because make no mistake, tonight is a lesson. Tonight was always going to be a lesson. The day your grandmother sent you to Lincoln alone and kept herself here, she was moving both her pieces at once. You watch her hands, and her hands are the whole library. The way she rubs Emma's back low and hard with an oiled palm through each pang. The way she times the pangs against her own murmured psalm. She has no clock. The clock is Latin and reads their spacing like weather. The way she feels the belly between pangs, both palms flat, eyes shut, and once, quietly to you alone, takes your two hands and presses them where hers were and says, "There, the head, down and well down. Feel it," and you feel it. Through Emma's hot, tight skin, a hard, round certainty, a person, a whole future person, an inch from your fingers, and something in your chest turns over and does not turn back. The women keep the room. This too is the medicine. They talk to Emma in the troughs between pangs, village talk, wool prices, whose hens have gone off laying, deliberately boring on purpose, an anchor rope of the ordinary paid out into her hands. They give her sips, ale, then your raspberry leaf brew, then ale again. They walk her when your grandmother says walk and kneel her against the bed when she says kneel. When Emma's courage cracks, and it cracks, past midnight, everything cracks past midnight, and she starts to cry that she can't, that she's too old, that God is punishing her for the pestilence years, for surviving, for her sister who didn't. The women close around her almost bodily, and old Sybil Webster takes her face in both hands and says, "None of that. God's busy. Tonight there's only us, and we've done this 30 times in this street, and you'll do it once more." And you stand at the fire with your ladle, 16, in your own flowers, your back one long ember awake, and you understand something you could not have said aloud. That everything from this morning is one thing. The rags and the moss and the churchyard corner and the terror at the gate. And this room. It is all the same knowledge, the same guild, the same unwritten craft of the body handed down hand to hand in firelight because no one else will carry it. The blood you hid all day and the blood this room is braced for are the same blood. The world upstairs, the priests, the physicians, the Latin, theorizes about it. This room deals with it. The child comes at the coldest hour, the hour your grandmother calls the wolf's turn when even the fire thinks about giving up. The last of it is fast and enormous, the way the last of it is. Your grandmother suddenly all quiet commands, the women braced, Emma somewhere beyond words, working, working. And then a slither and a wet weight in your grandmother's hands and a beat of silence so absolute you can hear the fire and then the cry. Thin, furious, climbing. A girl. The sound goes through the room and every woman in it exhales at once. One single body of women breathing out, and somebody laughs, and somebody starts crying, and Sybil Webster is already out the door into the dark to shout across to the Websters, where a man who could not taste his ale for 6 hours is about to. But watch your grandmother, because your grandmother has not exhaled. Your grandmother has handed the baby to the women, wiped, wrapped tight in warm linen, honey touched to the gums, all in the traditional order, and turned back to Emma, and her hands are on the belly again, and her face is the face from 7 years ago, the calm voice face, because this is the hour that took your mother and she has never once forgotten it, the afterbirth. And then the bleeding, and how much, and whether it stops. She needs the belly firm. The womb must close like a fist, she has told you 100 times. A soft womb bleeds. And she watches, and the room watches her watch, quietly, everyone knowing exactly what is being watched for and no one saying it, and you stand with the shepherd's purse already steeping because you made it ready an hour ago without being asked. And she notices that, one flick of the eyes, and files it. And this time, the fist closes, the blood slows, stops within the borders of ordinary. Your grandmother waits and presses and waits, longer than anyone else would, and then her shoulders come down that final half-inch, and she looks up, and she is 60-something years old and awake all night, and she grins like a girl. "Well," she says to the room, "that's a Cartwright with a temper, God help the parish." And it is over, and the ale comes out, the good ale, the groaning ale, brewed and set aside for this night weeks ago. And this room full of exhausted women in the ruins of the night becomes briefly the warmest place in England. Emma, propped and shaking and lit from inside, holds her daughter. The women drink and laugh with the specific looseness of a fear that has been stood down. John Cartwright is finally let in, hat literally in hands, and goes to his knees at the bedside, and nobody teases him for weeping, or rather everybody does, but gently. You get home in the grey before dawn, your grandmother's arm through yours, for whose support neither of you says, and the village is silver with dew, and the rooks are starting, and at your own door she stops, and looks at you for a long moment in the pale light. "You kept the water hot all night and made the staunching brew before I called for it," she says, "and you sold the tansy at 8p." A pause. "Your mother stood where you're standing once after a first night helping mine. Same grey face, same trying not to smile. I'm not. You are. Go to bed, Agnes." She turns to the door and over her shoulder, in the tone that pretends things are not important. "We'll make a midwife of you yet. God knows the world needs the trade. It never runs short of the work. You sleep until midday, which is a scandal, and no one wakes you, which is a verdict. When you finally surface thick-headed, the ache in your belly duller now, second day dull. The house is empty and there is bread and a smear of honey, the festival stuff, left on the board where you cannot miss it, and that is your grandmother's entire language of celebration, and you eat it slowly, alone, in the doorway, in the sun, and it is one of the best meals of your life. And then, because the day does not care that you were up all night midwifing, the day resumes. And now I want to slow down and walk you through the part of this story that most histories skip entirely, which is the part where nothing happens, the ordinary weeks. Because your flowers are not an event, they are a rhythm, and to understand what medieval women really did about them, you have to live inside the rhythm, so we're going to. The days ahead of you now, the small repeating machinery of it. Stay with me. This is the part where the day begins to soften. First, the washing. There are 3 used cloths and a stained shift from yesterday, plus today's, plus tomorrow's, and washing them is a task with rules, and the first rule is the one you already know, not where it can be seen. So it happens at the beck, the small stream below the village, past the willows, at the place the women use, which every woman knows, and no man has ever been told, and every man somehow knows not to fish. It happens early or late in the seams of the day. You crouch at the water's edge on the flat stone that generations of knees have polished, and you work. Cold water first, always cold. Hot water sets blood into cloth forever, and that is a thing every 8-year-old girl learns from her mother in this world, and almost nobody in the future will ever learn again from anyone. The cold of the beck is absolute, snow-fed, and it climbs your wrists and sets the bones of your hands aching inside the first minute. You soak the cloths and wring, and the water runs rust-dark and then pink and then fainter, downstream, away, and you soak again. For the stubborn stains there is the lie. Wood ash steeped in water, caustic, it stings in the cracks of your knuckles like tiny wasps, and there is wringing, hard wringing, the cloth twisted against itself until your forearms burn, water spattering cold on your shins. Your hands go red, then white, then a deep, throbbing red again. This is why the hands of every woman over 25 in your village look 10 years older than her face. Not this task alone, every task. All water is cold, all cloth is heavy. But this task every month, in every weather, January the same as June, breaking cat ice off the shallows with the heel of your hand to get at the water beneath. And then the drying, which is its own small chess problem, because linen must dry or it rots, and drying means hanging, and hanging means visible. So the cloths dry inside on the cord strung near the fire behind the drying herbs, where they red as rags among rags, or outside on the hedge in the drying wind, but under other laundry, beneath a shift, inside a sheet's fold. There is an entire folded-away architecture of concealment, passed down like the recipes, and every household of women has its own version, and if you could rise up over England like a rook and look down through every roof, you would see it everywhere. Thousands upon thousands of small white flags of the same secret, drying by the same fires, and not one word about any of it written down anywhere by anyone. Second, the counting. Your grandmother keeps no calendar. There is no calendar in the house. There is no paper in the house. But she keeps the moon, and she has taught you to keep it too. The moon is the only clock a village woman owns, and it happens to run close enough to the same period as her body that everyone assumes the two are geared together. The learned men are certain of it, moon and womb, tide and blood, and whether they're geared or not, the habit works. You note the moon at your onset, and you know roughly where in the sky to expect your next, and when a wife misses a moon, and then a second, it is the moon she sights when she comes to your grandmother's door, half hoping, half afraid, saying 2 moons now, Maud, and nothing. That is the other face of the counting, of course. The reason the counting matters so much. The reason mothers teach daughters to keep the moon before they teach them anything else about it. Your flowers are a message, and the message is not with child. And in a world where a woman may bear 10 times and bury 5, in a world where your own mother died of her 6th, every month the message arrives is a month the great wheel has passed you by. Some women weep when their flowers come. Some women weep when they don't. Very often it is the same woman in different years of her life, and your grandmother has held the hands of both, and if you take up her trade you will too. Third, the pharmacy, which is to say the garden and the ditch. Walk it with your grandmother as you have walked it since you were 7, and learn what the world grows for you free of charge. Mugwort for the cramp, along the church ditch, silver-backed leaves that smell of dust and sage. Yarrow, feathery, white-flowered for staunching, in every field margin in England. Shepherd's purse with its little heart-shaped seed pods, the great blood-stopper, the herb your grandmother reaches for first when bleeding of any kind runs too free. Raspberry leaf from behind the house for the childbed months. tansy, bright yellow buttons, strong and dangerous, an herb your grandmother uses seldom and speaks of carefully, because tansy in quantity can bring on flowers that are late, and bringing on flowers that are late is a door with a courtroom on the other side of it, and we will leave that door where it stands, but know that it stands there, and know that women have always known where it stands. Every one of these is knowledge, real knowledge, tested across more generations than the university at Oxford has existed. Some of it will hold up under the lamps of future chemistry, some of it will not, and none of that matters tonight, because tonight it is what there is, and what there is, administered by a woman who has watched its effects on real bodies for 50 years, is very far from nothing. And fourth, quietest of all, the teaching itself, because none of this is instinct. Every piece of it was told to you by your grandmother at the hearth, in the dark, over the wool carding, one thread of talk hidden inside another. How to fold the cloth, how to keep the moon, what the colours of the blood mean, which herbs, and how much, and when never, what to say to the priest and what to say to no priest alive. Your grandmother got it from her mother, who got it from hers, back and back and back, an unbroken chain of firelit murmuring reaching behind the pestilence, behind the conquest, behind the missionaries, behind Rome, because women were bleeding and folding cloth and steeping herbs on this exact hillside 1,000 years before anyone here had ever heard the name of Christ. And mothers were teaching daughters then too, and if you could listen down through the floor of time you would hear the same lesson in a dozen dead languages, the words changing, the hands moving the same. The pestilence 3 years ago cut this chain in house after house. Girls left with no mother and no grandmother, whole villages where the oldest woman is 30. And knowledge died with the knowers silently, the way it always dies, and nobody wrote it down, because the people who could write did not know it, and the people who knew it could not write. You are the next link. That is what this whole day has been. Your grandmother knows exactly how old she is. She's not sentimental about it. She's not sentimental about anything except, very occasionally, in the half-dark, your mother. But she's in a hurry in the specific unhurried way of old teachers, and every errand she sends you on has a second cargo, and you have started to notice, and she has noticed you noticing, and neither of you says anything, and the wool gets carded, and the fire cracks and settles, and the teaching goes on. The seasons turn the way they always turn, and take your year with them. Haymaking in June, when the whole village is in the meadows dawn to dark and your flowers come mid-harvest, and you work through them, raking and turning with the ache riding low in your back, changing your cloth behind the haycocks at the field's edge. 2 other women drifting to stand between you and the men with the timeless unspoken choreography of it. Wool duty, a service you have done for them and will do again. The August wheat, the stubble that shreds your ankles, the gleaning. October's slaughter month, blood of another kind, puddings and salting and your hands sticky at the wrist. The long indoor dark of winter, spinning until your fingertips crack, the beck iced over, washing water melted by the potful over the fire, but never for the cloths, cold only, always cold. Some rules bend for winter and that one does not. And month upon month, moon upon moon, the rhythm underneath it all until it is not an event, not a dread, barely even a thought. Fold, tie, endure, wash, dry, count, repeat. Your grandmother was right about everything, which no longer surprises you. It gets easier, and it never gets easy, and both of those are true at once, and holding 2 true things at once you are learning, is most of what growing up is. Somewhere in that turning year, 3 things happen that you will keep. The first happens at the well on an ordinary morning, and it is small, and it is not small. Isabel Thatcher, a year younger than you, motherless since the pestilence, raised by a father and 2 brothers in a house with no woman in it at all, is drawing water, and she is grey-white in the face, and she is standing wrong, standing the way you stand when you are trying to hold your whole body very carefully. And when she lifts the bucket, she makes a sound she instantly strangles, and looks around in terror to see who heard. You heard, and you look at her the way the washerwoman on Steep Hill looked at you. One assessing flick, and you see the whole of it in a second. No mother, no grandmother, no aunt, no one. Which means no one ever taught her. Which means she is doing this, has been doing it for a year, maybe 2, alone, with rags folded wrong, with no mugwort, no moon count, no words for any of it, believing, probably in the way of untaught girls, that whatever is happening to her is happening only to her, that she is uniquely cursed, uniquely dirty, uniquely wrong, because that is the price of a knowledge that lives only in mothers' mouths. Kill the mother, and the daughter is thrown back to the beginning of the world. You walk home with her, carrying one handle of her bucket. You do not say anything at the well, because the well has ears the way churches have ears. You say it in the lane, quietly, looking straight ahead, the way your grandmother says things, that your gran has a tea for the gripe, and that Isabel should come by after milking, and that the folding is easier if someone shows you the trick of it once, and that, here you use your grandmother's exact sentence, and feel the strangeness of it leaving your mouth, hand me down, like wearing her shoes. Every woman in the churchyard did the same, and every woman in the village does the same, and there's nothing under your kirtle that God hasn't seen a million times and grown bored of. Isabel doesn't say anything for 10 steps. Then she says, in a voice like something being set down after being carried too far, "Nobody ever told me anything." And she comes after milking, and your grandmother teaches her the way she taught you, hands and firelight and one thread of talk hidden in another. And afterward, when the girl has gone home walking like a person again, your grandmother looks at you across the hearth for a long moment and says nothing at all, and it is the loudest nothing she has ever said. The second thing is darker, and you need to see it too, because I promised you the truth of this world, and the truth has teeth. In November, word comes up the road from a village south of Marton, a place the size of yours, another 16 household survivor of the pestilence, that a woman there, a widow, a herb woman, has been taken before the church court at Lincoln. The charges arrive the way news arrives, worn smooth by many mouths, that milk soured in 3 houses, that a child sickened, that the widow had been seen gathering plants at the dark of the moon, that a bundle of stained cloths not her own was found beneath her roof. Thatch. And there it is, do you hear it? The cloths. Someone's blood kept, which means to the frightened mind someone's blood used, and around that one fact the whole hungry story crystallizes. Your grandmother listens to all of it, standing very still, and asks one question, "Whose cloths?" and gets no answer, because the story doesn't know, because the story doesn't care. Nothing much comes of it this time. This is 1351, not the burning centuries. The church court in this age deals mostly in penance and public shame, and the widow does her penance, barefoot at the church door on a Sunday, candle in hand, and is let be more or less, though more or less in a village is a sentence of its own that never fully ends. But your grandmother is silent all that evening, and at last, banking the fire, she says the longest thing she has ever said to you in one breath. Everything I know, everything I'm giving you, sits on a knife's back. The same neighbour who kisses your hands when you save her daughter will name you to a summoner when her cow dies dry, and the more you know, the better a story you make. That's why the cloths come home, Agnes. That's why we say little and let fools talk. It isn't shame. Hear me, because I'll say this once. It was never shame. It's that we hold a power they've decided to fear, and folk break what they fear, and I've no intention of being broken, and neither will you be. Quiet isn't shame. Quiet is armour. Quiet is armour. Set that beside the churchyard corner, and the cloths under the sacking, and the wall of women at the haycocks, and all of it relights itself in a different colour. You had thought, without ever thinking it, that the hiding meant the thing hidden was low. Now you see it the other way, the way she has always seen it. That the hiding is a discipline, a craft of survival practiced by people holding something valuable through hostile country. Smugglers not ashamed of what they carry. And the third thing that year is this. In February at lambing, in the freezing dark of a neighbour's barn with a ewe in trouble, your grandmother stands back, folds her arms into her sleeves and says, "Go on then. Your hands are smaller than mine and your eyes are better. I'll talk, you work." And you kneel in the straw with your sleeves rolled, lantern light and steam of breath, and you reach in and you find the tangled legs, and her voice comes over your shoulder, calm as the wolf's turn hour, back, now forward, now with her, now. And the lamb comes slick and steaming into the world and shakes its ridiculous head, and the ewe turns and starts licking, and your grandmother says, "Which is a knighthood? It's only a lamb, it's only a barn." It is also, and you both know it, the first time she's put a birth in your hands and kept hers in her sleeves. That could be you, kneeling in a firelit room in 20 years while a village holds its breath. That will be you. The path is as visible now as the Lincoln Road. Girl, helper, hands, and one grey morning, when the boy comes running and shouting a name, the name he shouts will be yours. And you should see one more kind of night before the year closes, because it happens perhaps once a month, all year, every year, and it is the other half of your grandmother's trade, the knock. The knock comes after dark, always after dark, soft, at the shutter rather than the door, and your grandmother is awake before the second tap. She sleeps the way sexton's dogs sleep, with one ear on duty. And this particular night, a night in the wet end of autumn, the knock belongs to Alice Reeve. Alice Reeve is 38 years old, the mother of 7 living, and she comes in sideways through the half-open door with the rain on her shoulders and her hood dripping, and she does not sit until she's asked twice, and she talks about the weather for the length of time it takes your grandmother to swing the pot over the embers, because there are rules to this too, a liturgy of approach, and your grandmother never hurries it. You have learned your place at these visits, at the far end by the wool, hands busy, ears open, face shut. Officially you are carding, actually you are at school. And then, in the pause your grandmother builds for it, Alice says what she came to say, staring at the fire, that her flowers this past half year have gone wrong, that they come too often and stay too long. That last month it was 12 days, and heavy like the first day all 12, and she is washing cloths past midnight so her daughters won't see the number of them and be frightened. That climbing the church hill on Sunday her heart knocked like a fist on a door, and the edges of the world went white and grainy. that she has been putting off coming, that she is afraid. And here her voice does the thing voices do, drops to almost nothing, because the biggest fears go smallest. She is afraid it is a growth, or a punishment, or the thing that took her own mother at 40. Watch your grandmother work, because this is the part no herbal teaches. She does not answer any of the fears yet. She takes Alice's hands first, turns them over, presses the nails, watches the colour come back slow, too slow. She pulls down the lower lid of Alice's eye with one thumb gently toward the firelight and looks at the inner rim, which should be red and is instead the pale pink of a dog's gum. And to you, across the room without turning her head, she says one word. See. And you get up and come and look, and you see, and you file it forever. The blood a woman is losing shows in the places the blood should be. The physicians in Lincoln would call Alice's state a dominance of cold and moist humours and prescribed by the moon. Your grandmother calls it what her mother called it. Bled white, the same phrase the butchers use. And her whole science is in that honesty. The woman is losing more than she is making. It is arithmetic. Everything in the end is arithmetic. Then, only then, she deals with the fears, in order, plainly. A growth. Maybe she doesn't lie, she never lies. But likelier the change, because Alice is 38, and this is how the change often announces itself, not by stopping but by flooding, the flowers going wild before they go out like a candle end. A punishment. And here your grandmother makes the short sound in her throat that serves her for a whole sermon, and says that God has better bookkeeping than to bill a woman's womb for her soul. And Alice laughs, one startled cough of a laugh, the first easy breath she has taken in the house. The thing that took her mother, your grandmother is quiet a moment and then says perhaps, and perhaps not. But her mother met it alone and told no one until it was too late to do anything but pray. And Alice has done the opposite. Alice is here, and here is where something can be done. And something is done. Shepherd's purse, the great stauncher, a strong decoction, and how to take it, and when. Nettle, boiled like pot herbs, eaten every day. For the blood that is lost must be rebuilt, and nettle and liver and the dark meat when she can get it are the rebuilding. And this is your grandmother running 200 years ahead of the schools again without knowing it, feeding iron to an anemia neither word for which she will ever hear. Rest at the flood's height, real rest, and your grandmother will say a word to Alice's husband herself if the husband needs a word said, and the way she says herself makes it clear the word will only need saying once. And the cloths, bring the count to Maud. Monthly, honestly, because the count is the measure of whether the tide is turning, and you cannot doctor what you will not count. Alice Reeve leaves an hour after she came, with a bundle of herbs under her cloak and her spine 2 inches longer, and at the door she tries to press a coin on your grandmother, who takes instead a promise of eggs, because there is an economy to this trade too, and it runs on eggs and bacon. And remember debts more than silver. And when the door is barred again, your grandmother stands looking at it a moment, and then says, to the door, or to you, or to the room, that one will see her grandchildren, not because of my herbs, because she knocked. She turns, and the firelight makes her face into hills and shadows. Remember it. Half this trade is plants. The other half is being the door a frightened woman can knock on at midnight. You can learn the plants from anyone. The door you have to become. The door you have to become. You card wool for another quarter hour in silence, and the rain talks on the thatch, and you turn the sentence over and over like a coin you suspect is worth more than its metal. And so the year has its dark rooms and its firelit ones. And then, because this world knows how to do joy with the same whole body it does everything else, the year has midsummer. The eve of St. John, the 23rd of June, the hinge of the year. And on that one evening the entire architecture of ordinary days is picked up and set aside. The bonfire is built on the green from every household's contribution of wood and old bones. Bonefire, the old people say, that's the very word. And as the long light finally lets go of the longest day, it is lit. And the whole village that survived everything stands around it with its faces gold and its backs blue dark. And there is ale, and there are cakes, and someone has a pipe, and someone has a drum, and the dancing starts, and for once, for one night, nobody is anybody's servant or debtor or daughter under instruction. You dance. You, Agnes, who spent the year learning gravity, spend one evening ignoring it. You dance the round dances with the other girls, hands crossed and gripped, whirling until the fire and the dark smear into one ribbon, and your plait comes loose, and your feet, those aching, road-hardened 14-mile feet, turn out to remember exactly what feet are secretly for. The young men leap the fire when it burns down to daring height, because young men are young men in every century that has ever had fire, and one of them, the Webster's eldest, times his leap to land near where you stand and pretends it was chance, and you pretend to believe him. And both pretences are noted by every matron on the green, and the herds of village opinion shift a half step in the firelight. And that too is how marriages begin here, not with a word but with a leap and a pretense, months before anything is said. And the women pass the ale, and the old ones sit on the benches with the babies, and Emma Cartwright's daughter, awake long past any law of childhood, stares into the fire from her mother's lap with the entire flame doubled tiny in each eye. And your grandmother sits among the old women like a queen among queens, saying little, missing nothing. And when the fire has fallen to a breathing red heap and the ashes beginning its long float down the dark, she catches your eye across it, flushed, loose-haired, laughing at something Isabel Thatcher has said, Isabel Thatcher who laughs now. And she gives you a look you will spend years learning you were given, a look with your mother in it, and the lamb in it, and Alice Reeve's door in it, and the whole slow handing over in it. And then she looks back at the fire, and the drum starts again, and the night goes on being the shortest and brightest of the year. Before we let the year close, come with me one more time beyond the village, because you'll wonder, anyone would wonder, whether it was the same for everyone, whether the lady in the manor and the nun in the priory and the queen in her painted chamber were crouching at cold becks too. And the answer is the medieval answer to almost everything, the same and completely different at once. Take the lady of a manor, say, the knight's wife at Sturton, whom you've seen twice in your life at church at the front in blue. Her body keeps the same calendar as yours. Her linen, though, is finer, and there is more of it, and above all she does not wash it herself. That is the great divider, the thing that separates her month from yours more than any physic laundresses. Some other woman's cracked red hands at some other cold water. Wealth in your world does not buy escape from the body. Nothing buys that. It buys distance from the body's labour, which is the next best thing and always has been. Her food is better too, and this matters more than her physicians know. Fed regularly on meat and wheat bread, her cycles run more regular than a poor woman's. Her flowers behave more like the tidy monthly clockwork the learned books describe, because the learned books were written by men observing, when they observed anything at all the well-fed. Even the theory of her body was built around her class. And if she ails, if her flowers flood, or fail, or grip her like a fist, she can send for a physician of the schools who will feel her pulse, inspect her water in a glass flask, consult the position of the moon, and prescribe with great confidence out of Galen and the calendar. Or, more likely, first, quietly, she will send for someone like your grandmother, because ladies do all the time down the back stairs, and the two systems of medicine, the Latin one and the fireside one, pass each other on those stairs, politely, each privately certain of the other's foolishness. Take the nuns. There is a priory of women a half-day north, and behind its walls live 30 consecrated virgins whose bodies keep the same moon as yours. And think about what that means practically. 30 women, one enclosed household, cycles drifting together the way women's cycles living close will seem to do. An entire institution obliged to manage, launder, dry, and never once mention a river of linen. And manage it they do, with rotas and store cupboards and a cellaress's quiet bookkeeping. The same craft as your grandmother's raised to the scale of an abbey, and equally absent from every document the priory will ever produce. Except, and here is a strangeness to fold into your pocket, the one place in this entire century where women wrote about women's bodies at all was places like that. There was an abbess on the Rhine, 2 centuries before you, Hildegard, who wrote about the flowers plainly as God's work, as the body's tide, with more calm good sense than most of the doctors, and the most famous manual of women's medicine in Europe, the one the physicians actually copy, carries the name of a woman of Salerno-Trota. Thin threads, but real ones. Here and there against the whole grain of the world, a woman got her hands on a pen, and take the other end, the women with least of all, the beggar on steep hill, the labourer's widow following the harvest. For them no moss, no spare linen, no beck of their own. The shift takes it, or the straw does, or their legs do, and the world looks away with the special hard-eyed tact it reserves for poverty. And this too is part of the truth, and I won't pretend it isn't. Whatever indignity your month contains, there is always a woman a rung down for whom the same month is worse, and she is enduring it right now, within a mile of you, in silence, same as you, same as everyone. That is the thing you come to see this year, holding all these women in your mind at once. Emma in her groaning ale glow, Isabel at the well, the lady in blue, the nuns behind their wall, the widow doing penance barefoot, your mother, your grandmother, you. Under the wool and the silk and the habit and the rags, one calendar, one craft, held in 100,000 pairs of chapped hands, passed mouth to mouth beneath the notice of every chronicle. The kingdom keeps its record of kings. This kingdom keeps no records at all, and it is older than the other one, and it will outlast it. And so we come back at last to where every day of this world ends, which is the dark, and the fire burning low, and the bed. It is a night in the following spring, a year, near enough, since you walked to Lincoln alone. The day behind you was nothing. That's the point of it. It was a nothing day, a Tuesday of the soul, milking, weeding the leek bed, carrying water, an hour of carding by the door in the last of the light while your grandmother dozed upright in the way of old women, pretending to watch the street. Your flowers came and went last week, 5th or 6th day now, the last faint traces, barely worth a cloth, the moon waning with you, right on its schedule and yours. The washing is done and dried and folded flat in the linen bag behind the spare kirtle, where a man's eyes would never go. The account of the month is closed. Supper was pottage. Supper is always pottage, and tonight the pottage had bacon in it, because Emma Cartwright's husband slaughtered a pig, and Emma Cartwright remembers her debts, and her daughter, 1 year old now, fat and furious and thriving, was carried up the street this afternoon to be shown off, and gripped your finger with her whole minuscule fist and would not let go. And your grandmother watched the child not let go of you with an expression she thought nobody saw. Now the fire is banked. The shutters are fast. The cow shifts her weight in the dark at her end of the house, a slow, leathery rustle, a sigh vaster than any human sigh. Your grandmother's breathing has already found its sleep rhythm across the room, with the small catch in it that has been there since the winter, that you listen for now every night without deciding to. You lie on your back on the straw pallet under woolen cloak, and your body begins its nightly settlement, item by item, like a household locking up. Your feet, freed from the turn shoes, ache and then warm and then ease. Your hands lie open on the blanket, and they're not a girl's hands anymore. You noticed it this year. The knuckles roughened, the palms' calluses gone permanent, a scatter of small scars, lie cracks at the thumb, working hands, your mother's hands, arriving on your wrists a decade early, and you find you do not mind. They have earned their look. They have held back bleeding and hauled water up hills and delivered a lamb steaming into February and folded more linen than any clerk will ever count. The dark of the room is total and familiar. You could walk it blind, and do most mornings. Somewhere above you in the thatch, a mouse conducts its small business. The wind moves in the roof straw with a sound like the world breathing through a blanket. Far off, a mile, more, a dog speaks twice to the night and thinks better of it. And your mind, loosening, does what it does now on the edge of sleep and drifts up, out of the house, over the sleeping street, over the church tower, north along the road you walked, up the long rise where you stopped that morning with the basket dragging your arm. And there it is again, standing in your mind as it stands in the dark right now, this very hour, 7 miles away. The cathedral on its ridge, the tallest thing that human beings have ever made, higher than the pyramids of the old dead kings, black against the stars, with the whole city asleep at its feet. It will be there tomorrow. It was there this morning. It is there right now, in the exact same night that holds your house. And there is a comfort in that you could not explain to the priest, that the greatest and the smallest are lying under one and the same darkness, the spire and the pallet, the cannons in their close and the cow in her stall, and the night makes no distinctions and asks no one their calendar. Centuries will pass. The village of Marton will empty and refill and empty again. The great spire you stood beneath will ride the sky over Lincolnshire for another 200 years, and then come down in a storm one March night, and the cathedral will go on without it, shorter and still vast, and pilgrims will become tourists and not know what the sky above the tower is missing. The strip fields will be hedged and swallowed. The beck will still run. The road you walked will be walked and ridden and paved and driven, and it will still go where it went. And the thing you carried, the secret craft, the folded linen, the moon count, the mugwort, the whispered chain of mothers, all of it will change past recognition, and none of it will change at all. The cloths will become other things, softer things, bought things, and the washing at the cold beck will end, and thank God for that, let it end. But the counting will go on. The arithmetic on the fingers in the dark will go on. The glance between two women on a hill, the wall of friends at the field's edge, the older one teaching the younger one the trick of it. That will go on, in languages you never heard of, in cities piled higher than your spire, among women who will know almost nothing of you and will be, in the 1 hour a month that matters, your exact contemporaries. Some things don't change. The body doesn't change. The kindness of women to each other in the body's weather, that doesn't change either. They will not write your name anywhere. You know that, in the untroubled way you know the sun goes down. No roll, no chronicle, no stone. Agnes Fuller of Marton will leave the record of the world exactly as she found it, empty of her. But the record of the world was always a poor net, and the biggest fish swam through it daily. You are written where your kind are written, in Isabel Thatcher walking like a person again, in a Cartwright girl's grip, in the hands of whoever you will one day teach at a hearth like this one, murmuring one thread of talk inside another, in the simple, stubborn continuation of everything. That's the ledger. It has no pages and loses nothing. The fire ticks as it cools, a last small settling of ash, soft as a held breath let go. Your thoughts are coming slower now, and further apart, the way carts space out at the end of a market day. The ache in your back has surrendered. Your hands are warm. The straw has taken the print of you, the way it does, the mattress and the body agreeing on a shape after a year of negotiation, and the wool at your chin smells of smoke and lanolin and home. You're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a roof, and a fire banked to live till morning, and an old woman breathing across the dark whose whole life's knowledge is moving into your hands a little more each day, and a village around you that knows your name, and a body that carried you 14 miles and back and has kept, this month again, all its own appointments. That's more than most souls in this hard year of grace can say. That's enough. The sounds of the night grow fainter, or maybe you're just listening less. The wind in the thatch, fainter. The cows slow breathing, fainter. The mouse, gone quiet. Your grandmother's breath, rising and falling, an old tide that has come in and gone out for 60 years and means to keep on for a while yet. The boundary starts to blur now, the one between waking and sleep, the way it blurs when the body has truly earned the crossing. Somewhere out in the dark the moon you keep is keeping itself, thinning toward a new above the sleeping fields, pulling the far-off sea, minding its schedule and yours. The spire stands over the sleeping city. The beck runs cold under the willows, carrying nothing tonight, keeping every secret it was ever handed. In 16 households, the fires are banked and the doors are barred, and everyone who survived everything is asleep, or nearly. And you, Agnes Fuller, 16 years old, almost 17, midwife's girl, keeper of the moon and the linen and the quiet, daughter of Joan, who you still reach for, granddaughter of Maud, who is not done with you yet, nor you with her. You sink into the dark. Tomorrow will come soon enough. The milking and the water and the leak bed and whatever knock at the door the day sees fit to send. But that's tomorrow, for now there is just this. The softness of sleep reaching up to claim you. The warmth you made yourself with your own banked fire. The old woman breathing across the room. The distant patient heartbeat of a world that never quite stops turning and never quite stops beginning again. You close your eyes. The last thing you hear is the wind moving over the thatch, a long, slow hush, like a hand smoothing a blanket, like the sound the sentries make when they pass over a village and leave it sleeping. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took Agnes on her straw pallet in Marton, almost 700 years ago tonight. Let the fire tick down. Let the noise quiet. Let the counting stop. No moons to keep now. No cloths, no road, no basket. Nothing owed till morning. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. You've earned this rest, all of it. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.